This is Culture, Race, and Equity, a Chicago Urban League podcast. And right now, with a seat at the table, is the president of New Era Chicago, an activist organization that is really involved in the community on the ground. When I talk about on the ground organizations, this is definitely one of the ones we talk about. And it's only been around for about a year and a half or so.
That's correct, brother.
And the president is brother Taji. How you doing?
I'm good, brother.
Man, it's good to see you, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely. Now, first, let us know about New Era Chicago.
No doubt. Well, New Era Chicago is a unapologetically pro-black, action-based community organization. And what all that means is, man, we love our people unapologetically. We're not ashamed to say black pride, black love, black unity, because that's exactly what's needed in our communities nowadays, is for us to come together under that mantra of loving each other and appreciating you so I can appreciate myself, bro. You know what I'm saying? So, and the action-based part of it is we're out in the streets roughly 5 to 6 days out the week, you know what I'm saying? So we're very active in the community because we believe that consistency is going to breed the results that we want to see.
One thing that impressed me in particular about New Era Chicago and why we position this conversation of public safety on the back end of the conversation with Father Flager is the generational difference. You know, Father Flager has been around for a long time, and this is a new organization, at least the Chicago chapter, that moves in new ways. I found out about New Era Chicago by looking at one of your Facebook videos. About 1 million views you got on that video.
No doubt.
What was happening in the one I saw?
Well, basically, man, that video, it was a shutdown of a gas station, and what we preach is accountability within the community. That's with the residents, our brothers and sisters, the store owners who we allow to come in our communities and make a living by supporting their businesses, and also the police that are supposed to be policing our neighborhoods, you know. So everybody needs to be held accountable and held to a certain standard of being in our community to make sure that we're living the way that we need to live. That particular gas station had a long record of disrespecting the women in the community, the children, and things like that. We went to the gas station to talk to them about it, and they tried to disrespect our organization. So we had to show them that we can deliver a consequence for the disrespect of the residents in the community. So we shut down their business for about 4 or 5 hours. They didn't make a dime. They didn't make any money, you know. So that video went viral, bro, and that was kind of our introduction to the city.
Now, what when you talk about disrespect to the women in the community, what did that look like? What are you
Well,
talking about?
unfortunately, man, what happens is for those of us that live in these communities, when you go in the store, the Arab store owners talk to the women in the community like they're members of the community, or like they see some of the brothers in the community talk to the women and things like that, and that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for the brothers to talk to our women like that, and it's not acceptable for the Arabs to talk to our women like that. So we have to make it understood that there's a certain level of respectability that's going to be had in our communities, especially if we're allowing you to come in and make a living off of our black dollars.
What was the neighborhood's reception when it was shut down for 4 hours? You guys were out front. You didn't let anyone in. What were they saying?
Well, I'll be honest with you, bro. It was different reactions. For the most part, everybody was supportive of it. They even said that they had complaints about the store before, run-ins with the people who worked there. You had some people who really wanted to go in the store because he really just had to get a blunt right then, and he wasn't understanding the whole scope of what was happening. And then you had other people who were they looked at it in a negative light at first, but then once they saw how serious we were about the message that we wanted to get across, then they got with the program as well. And that's what we got to do in these communities, man. We got to lead by example. We can't say what the change is. We got to demonstrate it.
Not only do you hold people accountable who are outside of the community who, you know, may have businesses in the black community, but you also hold the community members accountable, and especially when it comes to public safety.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about a march. I don't know if there was video about this, but was it Parkway Gardens?
Yeah.
That you guys were in. Talk about that.
Yeah, we do Parkway Gardens. Well, you know, we don't see Parkway Gardens as being a dangerous neighborhood because all of our neighborhoods are the same. You know what I'm saying? So Parkway Gardens ain't no more dangerous than Inglewood or Roseland or Austin. So yeah,
Southside neighborhood, 63rd and Cottage.
Yeah, 63rd and Cottage Grove. Apologies, 63rd and King Drive. My apologies. And,
No, that's my bad.
Yeah, we went through there. We talked to the brothers just like we talked to everybody else. And it was all love. They didn't tell us, man, we trying to do our thing. Y'all need to move around. They weren't like, y'all over here making a whole lot of noise. They like, bro, you right. You know what I'm saying? Everything y'all saying is right. Some of them started to help us pick up the trash because that's what we do when we go to these communities as well. They don't even understand the conditions that they living in, bro, because we become so accustomed to living that way. So that's the message that we want to bring across when we go to communities like Parkway Gardens is we can change this ourselves. You don't need to wait for somebody to come change the culture of this community if you're really not with the way that things are going over here. We can do it ourselves. The men and women within these communities have the resources and the mental capabilities to change these situations ourselves. We just got to care enough, and we got to understand. We have to. Unfortunately, as a people, sometimes we need to see these things demonstrated. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't know how to acquire power over ourselves because we've been oppressed for so long. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's important with just not New Era Chicago, but any activist or any organization to show the community that you do have power over yourself, and you need to reclaim it.
What are the key contributors then to violence in our communities? It sounds like self-respect would be among them. What would you lay it out? If you could boil it down to maybe 3, 5, or however many you think there are, what are the key contributors to violence in black communities?
Poverty, miseducation, the prison industrial system, the lack of resources and workshops and vocational programs for the young men in the community to get involved with. The rate that so many of our young women are getting pregnant, and while they're getting pregnant, their boyfriend is being locked up at the same time. So generationally, we're growing up without any type of real leadership in our communities. We're missing leadership as well. You know what I'm saying? And leadership starts with yourself. Once you start holding yourself accountable, now it's easier to hold the next man accountable, or they'll start holding themselves accountable once they see you doing it yourself. You know what I'm saying? So I just start with the poverty piece. That's major, bro. Poverty produces crime. Crime is a product of poverty. You know what I'm saying? So whenever you have a bunch of poor people living in a restricted space, fighting for resources and fighting for opportunities and things like that, certain people are going to have to cut certain corners just to survive, man. This is a survival thing. You know, don't nobody enjoy being poor. Don't nobody really enjoy being violent. And the violent nature that is within some of our people, that's also an emotional thing. You know what I'm saying? The emotional, the mental health of the black community. You know what I'm saying? So we got so many things, bro. It ain't even one, man. You said 5, bro. We can go all day about the problems that's affecting us. But I truly believe one of the things that we could do right now to make an immediate turnabout is we got to start supporting these black-owned businesses. We got to start creating black-owned businesses. We got to start providing jobs for one another, and that automatically reduces crime in the community, because now that brother, he don't have to go in the store to steal to eat tonight. He don't have to rob the lady getting off the bus to eat tonight. I provided him with a job. You know what I'm saying? We provided him with a job, and then, excuse me, once these businesses start to grow, now we get to expand. So instead of me taking my money and giving it to somebody who's taking it outside of the community to build their community, we need to keep the money within our own community and rebuild these communities. So I think that's the quickest way that we can make a turnabout, and that's one of the more damaging things to us right now, man, is that we're poor, bro. We're poor. It's a lot of poor people fighting for minimum resources and minimum opportunities, and that's why you have all of this pain and hurt.
You talked a lot about, so if I could break it down like in quadrants, like you have the external factors, the things that happen to the community, like the prison industrial complex, and then you broke down to like the internal factors about, you know, personal self-respect or interpersonal relationships, whether it be fathers who aren't in the household, etc. But when I think about poverty, I remember, you know, even before the podcast started off, everyone talking about Africa and listening to Fela Kuti, and you think about third world countries that have poverty but don't have the same crime rates as Chicago.
Right.
So then you wonder what the external factors are that created this perfect storm of poverty plus all of these outside factors, systemic factors that create this powder keg that results in gun violence. What do you think that is?
The additional thing that adds on to the violence and things in our communities like that is the propaganda through social media, through entertainment, through just the things that we encounter on a daily basis. When you think that you don't come from being nothing but a slave, and you went through the civil rights movement, and now you a real nigga. You know what I'm saying?
Be free. We keeping it real on this, yeah.
Yeah, now you're a real nigga, you know what I'm saying? So that we're missing an aspect of who we are, you know what I'm saying? And that's the internal part that we have to simplify to the masses, bro, you know what I'm saying? Because once we understand who we are, we'll understand why we are what we are, and we'll know how to change that so we can go to where we want to go, bro. You know, but yeah, so I mean, you know, it's crazy, man. We got a lot of different things, especially from the mental and emotional aspect of who we are, and all the hurt and pain that we've been through generationally, that has us in the position that we're in. But we can't change this thing, bro. This is something that I tell people all the time. We're only 2 or 3 generations removed from when we have pride in ourselves as a people. You know
That's
what I'm
right.
saying? Like when this community right here, you know what I'm saying? It was a lot of wealthy business owners, and it was black owned butcheries and the milkman and stores like that, the tailor, you know what I'm saying? Everything was black owned. Because we had to deal with one another, you know what I'm saying. But once the integration piece was placed into our communities, and I don't want to jump all over the board, but once the integration piece was placed into our communities, you know what I'm saying, that took away from the wholeness of the community, and we started gravitating to do other things, and that allowed others to come in and pilfer off of the community, and that's why you have all of these Arab stores. The first Arab store here in the city of Chicago is right over here on 47th Street. You know what I'm saying? So you just like we are a very loving people. You know what I'm saying? Naturally, that's who we are. Naturally, so we always give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and we always give everybody a pass. But unfortunately, we never get that in return. And what winds up happening is we stay in the same position that we're in while we're trying to help others get out of the position that they're in. And that's just something that we need to understand as a people, man. There's nothing wrong with taking care of home first. Everybody else does it. Every other nationality does it. That's not racism. That's nationalism. You know what I'm saying? Me caring about where I live and making sure that it's productive for my children when they grow up and their children. But we've been conditioned as a people to put others first. You know what I'm saying? And then we are also naturally that way. Because we are a given people. So. We have to understand who we are, brother. We got to understand who we are, and then we'll understand why we are where we are. And once again, that'll allow us to go to where we need to be.
You're not all over the place at all, by the way, too, because Father Flager quoted Timmy Black, who said the exact same thing. And we've heard it before about how integration actually hurt some African American communities, if not most of them, especially in the business sense. What would you say to someone then if you say that black nationalism is not selfishness and it's not wrong? How is white nationalism then wrong?
Well, what happens, so the examples that we've been given of white nationalism or white power, let's just say that because those are the counterparts, black power and white power. That's really the two opposites here. So white power has always been associated with taking advantage of others for your own benefit. You know what I'm saying? All of the death and all of the pictures of lynchings and the KKK and all these other white supremacist groups who oppress others for their own, not even so much for their own benefit, but just for the pleasure of it sometimes. You know what I'm saying? That's what it seems. That's not what black power or black nationalism about. Black power means let's unite ourselves and retake power over our own conditions. Let's stop relying on others to take care of us when we can take care of ourselves. As a whole, we have 1.3 trillion spending power. We would be the 9th richest nation in the world if we pooled all our money, and that's not even talking about all the under the table money that we spend on weed and liquor and all that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So we have money and resources to make the changes that we want to change, that we need to make. You know what I'm saying? But it's on us to get into the mind state of pooling ourselves together and do that. And we have to understand. We have to stop allowing the propaganda to tell us that raising a black fist means that you're oppressing somebody else. No, I have to tell you that I'm proud of who I am, bro, because I've always been told not to be proud of who I am. That's the propaganda that's been placed on me ever since I've been here. You know what I'm saying? So in order for me to reverse that, I got to empower myself, and I got to speak power into myself and into my people. And that power doesn't mean to oppress others. That power means to empower ourselves. And nobody should have a problem with somebody empowering themselves unless you want to oppress them.
Mm. There was a point you made earlier that I thought was real key about how the prison industrial complex exacerbates this crime problem. To some people who aren't privy to the issues, it'll seem counterintuitive, because don't you have a prison complex because there's crime already happening? Can you break down how the prison industrial complex increases recidivism, meaning increases the likelihood of someone going back to jail after having been released, and how that in turn creates more violence?
No doubt. Well, let me start first of all with the prison industrial complex is, and it's basically the same thing as a plantation, because anybody who knows anything about the police or policing in this country, it basically started with the vagrancy laws that were being enforced immediately after slavery, basically saying if you were homeless, or if you didn't have a job, or if I caught you walking down the road, or basically if you was a slave that was just freed, I was going to lock you up for it. and return you to the plantation, so to speak. And it's no different now, you know, with the prison industrial complex. What they're doing is a lot of these privatized prisons and things like that. They have a certain quota that they actually have to hit, or they, you know what I'm saying, they have a legal issue with the state and things like that. So prison complexes is big businesses, especially for smaller white suburbs and things like that. There, man, it's almost like a gold rush to get these things built, bro. And how are they gonna fill them up? You know what I'm saying? How are they gonna fill up all these prisons in order to justify them being there? And because they benefit from filling up the prisons, they want to keep the prisons filled up, so they're not providing the type of rehabilitation, so to speak, within the prison, so that when you get out, you can reincorporate yourself into normal society, because it benefits them, bro. They want you to come back to prison. That's why the turnover rate is so high, and so many people go back. Not even so much from the mental. When people say people are institutionalized, it's not that they're institutionalized. It's just that it's almost like they've been scientifically put into a situation where they know these folks have a high likelihood of returning, bro. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't have a strong support system, which is the village, that's why we got to get back to the village and looking out for these brothers and sisters when they get out. We have to have programs to make sure that they don't go back, bro, because like I say, it benefits the police officer out here that grabs them up. It benefits the county, because they get money for them sitting in the county. It benefits the judge because he got another case to take care of. It benefits the state because they receive the tax money from having the prison locked up. And of course, the prison receives, they went in as well because they're keeping their business running. So everybody benefits from the destruction of the black community, except for the black community, bro. And we have to be responsible for putting an end to that, bro, because nobody will.
Let's take a step back to the protests and demonstrations and the way you handle them. Are protests against black on black crime effective? And when I say by protests, I mean marches.
Okay.
I mean that form of protest.
So are you saying as far as like how we move, or maybe how another organization move?
How in general, how in totality, not how you move specifically, but how we often hear when a white police officer shoots an African American, people crowd the streets, jump into the streets, and they march. But people don't march when black people kill other black people. And the argument I pose to many people who say that is, well, how effective is a march about black people killing other black people? Is that march? Because marches and demonstrations can be seen as marketing tools for said organization, just to let the world know that we're looking at this problem. Yeah. And it also can compel a government to act. But can it compel community members to stop the violence?
Well, what it does is it can't be an isolated event. That's why you have to be consistent with it, bro. You can't go over just when that isolated incident happened, and then once everybody leave from the visual or whatever it is, then you gone and these folks never see you again. That's why you gotta have some follow through. You gotta be in the hood, or you gotta be where these things are happening all the time, because our people, we've been used and abused by so many people, man, from our own organizations to politicians to the church, a lot of different people, you know what I'm saying? Like I say, everybody is benefiting from that pain, bro. So, the demonstration could be effective depending on how much outrage you truly have about what's happened, you know what I'm saying? And our people are really good with reading the bullshit, you know what I'm saying? And that's why some of these other activists and organizations, they don't have the same effect that our organization may have, because our people, when they look you in the eye, bro, you know what I'm saying? When you look at me in my eye and I'm telling you something, you know what I'm saying? 9 times out of 10, our people have a built-in bullshit meter. They could tell when somebody's trying to play them and when you're genuine about what you're saying, So as long as it's genuine and you have some type of follow-up to what you're over there demonstrating or protesting about, it could be very effective, But if you're just gonna go over there for that one isolated moment for those 3 or 4 hours, then no, it won't be effective.
While we're talking about like the difference in protests and the reasons for different protests, thinking about that policing issue, how do you balance the need to keep communities safe with the fact that communities don't trust a lot of the police officers in their community?
That's accountability, bro. Right now, my organization is sitting down with the other men in Chicago that's actually out here doing work and things like that. And what we're trying to do is come to a consensus on what type of consequences need to be delved out from within the community to hold that accountability. Because listen, the police don't live in our community, bro. You know what I'm saying? They come, this is a job for them. They come do their 8 hours and they get up out of there. You know what I'm saying? We're the ones that have to live here on a consistent basis. So we should be the ones that set the tone as far as what's acceptable and what's not acceptable within the community. You know, as long as you have an outsider doing that, it'll never be no real significant change. So the people within the community has to take over that mantle and like, look, you raping ladies and things like that, check it out, bro. You're gonna have to move around. You know what I'm saying? If we see you over here again, this what it's gonna be. You know what I'm saying? And I don't, trust me, I don't condone no type of black on black violence, but I don't condone nobody putting black on black violence on our community as well. You know what I'm saying? So if there's a predator within the community needs to address that. You know what I'm saying? Because the police, they may or may not. You know what I'm saying? They don't have a vested interest as much as I do, because my mama and my sister and my lady got to walk up and down the street. So I got to make certain that they straight. You know what I'm saying? The police, he may or may not run into us. So that's another part of the accountability piece that we preach with the community, man. The men, more so than anything else in these communities, we got to get back to being men. What type of man just let anybody do anything in his house? These communities are our house, not just the apartment that you live in, or not just the physical address that you have. Because once you come outside the house, you gotta live within that environment as well. You know what I'm saying? So you can't just say, if you own this building, I'm just gonna take care of this office right here, and whatever happened to the rest of the building just happened to the rest of the building. You gotta walk down the stairs to get to your car, or you gotta go down there to the, use whatever the case may be. So we gotta get out of the mind state of just doing for self, and we gotta reincorporate that village mentality, bro. And that's how we re-establish accountability within our communities. You know what I'm saying? Me caring about you enough to hold somebody accountable for what they did to you.
How can the media hold systems accountable? What role does the media play in all of this?
Well, it depends, bro. I'm a big fan of black media outlets such as yours and a lot of other brothers and sisters that we talk to that support us. They come out and shoot our videos and put our message out there in other organizations. So we appreciate you all. And what you all could do more so than the mainstream media is just continue to put the true stories of what's actually happening out into the community. Because a lot of times mainstream media is always some form of propaganda, depending on which way they want to sway the story, and that goes from news station to news station. So different news stations may report the same story in several different ways. So you would never be able to really truly get the actual what's happening from the mainstream media. But brothers like you, that's actually out here talking to the people that's out in the trenches and know what's going on, that's the best way for us to get our media out there. We got to support you all. We got to endorse you all. You know what I'm saying? We got to, we go to YouTube and all these other things, and World Star, whatever the case may be. We need to be coming to websites and blogs just like yours, man, because you all are the ones that's actually putting what's going on out in the streets out to the people.
I appreciate that, Taji. And it's interesting, too, because I work for a mainstream outlet, too. You know what I mean? And finding ways for mainstream outlets to understand what stories are important to us and what stories are important to communities. You can't talk about, not even speaking about any station in particular, but you can't talk about wanting to have a more diverse audience if you're not telling diverse stories. Yeah. And it doesn't mean just talking to that one community member in the hood who is the go-to person when something happens in any black community in Chicago.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man, because, so for instance, I'm not sure if you heard about this, but there was a big incident with us and the police on April 1st. We was doing one of our programs, and they came out there and bum rushed us and locked some folks up, and it was a bunch of bullshit, you know what I'm saying, especially from some public servants who had observed us cleaning up the community for several hours before. We weren't harassing nobody. We weren't doing any anti-police chants or anything like that. We were just strictly cleaning up the community and trying to link with the people and things like that. But if the people aren't aware that these type of things happen, then there'll never be any real true justice. Now, we had major media outlets come out and cover the story, but it was still skewed a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And it's all good because that's their job, man. That's their job, and that's why one thing we do as an organization is we try to stay away from the mainstream media, because a lot of times the message gets mixed up. But if I had to give them a bit of advice, man, my best advice would be go talk to these families that are really hurting. Don't do the flashy stories and things like that, because once you start telling the true tales of what's happening in these communities on a consistent basis, maybe somebody outside of the community would be willing to come in and help. But as long as they think these things are happening just because we can't control ourselves or just because we like living like this, then the situation continue to be that way.
And I think that's what makes New Era so powerful too. You guys create your own. You do your own community reporting because you tell your story. If the Facebook page, we see the whole Facebook Live video of what happened, you guys tell your stories too. And that was the vision behind this podcast too. So somebody who's worked for, myself worked for an African American news station, and then now the mainstream station. I said, well, how can community organizations create their own media so that we tell our own stories? You know what I'm saying? With the same professionalism as a huge outlet. Last question. Taji, how would you define equity, and how can resources be distributed more equitably in Black communities?
Oh, sorry, bro.
We can edit that.
Okay.
It's all good.
I take the question again. My bad.
Yeah. How would you define equity, and how can resources be distributed more equitably in Black communities?
What I think we actually need in the Black community more so than an infusion of cash is we need training programs. We need financial literacy workshops. We need vocational training. We need we don't need loans and things like that. We need long-term solutions that will allow us to build a strong financial foundation that we could grow from. That's the only equity that I could think of, brother. I don't. There is no true equity when one segment of a population is less educated or less equipped to deal with finances and politics and things like that. So, the equity would come if we were to ever receive any equity in the form of providing these low-income communities, the Black communities, with the type of resources that they need to produce long-term tangible results for the communities, not just acts of generosity. We don't need no more acts of generosity. If somebody's going to give us something as far as equity, then we need an equal stake in making sure that we can have an equal footing with the rest of the people in this country. I'm not sure if that'll ever happen, but we'll see.
Brother Taji Gaines is the president of New Era Chicago. Thank you for taking a seat at the table, man.
Absolutely, bro. Appreciate you.